So here we have Miss MacDonald from the Sinn Féin, huh? The fraudulent slip from the Sinn Féin, or as I call them, Sharia Féin. So here's Miss MacDonald on Virgin Media talking about veto. Now remember that situation came up there, I think it was about a year ago, wasn't it? When you had O'Gorman and Harris and Martin. Nobody gets a veto on who comes into their community, yeah? So, Miss Liu is telling you she's just like the rest of them.
Should communities have a veto then? In those areas where you will locate your iPass centres, there has to be a level of communication, and communities have to have some entry point to give a view,
so can they
to raise
no,
a concern.
then?
But that's not a veto. And in fairness to people...
But it's not a consultation if you can't say no either, is it?
Well, in the planning process, everybody's consulted. You can make your observation. Nobody has a veto. In democratic societies where we respect each other, where we respect communities, where we watch for social cohesion, we always have to give people their place, hear what they have to say, allay their concerns, take on board things that they...
But they can't say no.
But you don't get a veto, no. And I think a lot was made by government on this idea of you can't have a veto. And they use that as cover for not actually going and talking to people.
So basically, yeah, she's trying to put it forward like, actually, you know, when all of them were saying that about veto, they were just saying that, oh, well, you couldn't go and consultate, whatever that word was, sorry, right? Basically talk to the communities and tell them the situation of what's going to occur, right? But she made the point, and I think she said it, go back and listen, she says it about 5 or 6 times, you don't get a veto. You don't get a veto, right?
Should communities have a veto then?
Sorry, let's skip back. So, I did my usual little bit of digging on this, right? Once again, having my conversations with the old AI. I said, talked about veto and eventually got round, which led the conversation get to tyranny, right? How it developed, God knows. But that's what it leads to. That's what this telling us that we don't get a veto leads to tyranny, because they're suppressing us. Whether you like it or not, accept the truth, they're oppressing us. Okay? So, it gave me some examples of this in history. So, obviously, one being Nazi Germany, okay? The context being Germany was a democracy under the Weimar Republic following World War I, economic instability, resentment from the Treaty of Versailles, and the political polarization created fertile ground for authoritarianism. How it happened? Adolf there and the Nazi Party were democratically elected. Once in power, Adolf used the Reichstag fire as a pretext to pass the Enabling Act, granting him dictatorial powers. Now, bear with me, folks. I might mess up a few of these words because this is some big-ass words in it, right? This dismantled democratic institutions, suppressed opposition, and paved the way for a totalitarian regime. Why it unfolded? Now, these are key moments here, I think, because it's like, and I keep saying to you, history repeats, you know? So why it unfolded? Economic desperation, political disunity, and propaganda made the populace willing to sacrifice freedoms in exchange for promised stability and national pride. Huh? Except now, the pride isn't anything to do with a nation. It's to do with all the rainbow and all that. They've kind of hijacked the pride one might have in a nation and sort of filled the gap, filled the LGBT hole with it. That's basically what they've done. But that's why it unfolded in Nazi Germany, okay? 2, Soviet Union under Stalin in 1924 to 1953. Damn. Context: after the Russian Revolution, the Bolsheviks initially promised a government of the people. However, Stalin centralized power, transforming the Soviet Union into a dictatorship. How it happened? Stalin eliminated rivals through purges, show trials, and widespread terror. He controlled the economy through collectivization and suppressed dissent through the secret police, who were the NKVD. I don't know what that stands for, but the NKVD was the police force, secret police, basically. Why it unfolded? Post-revolution chaos and the need for strong leadership allowed Stalin to consolidate power. Fear and state-controlled propaganda kept the populace subdued. It's just repeating. Everything's just repeating. Number 3, fascist Italy under Mussolini. Context: post-World War once again was in turmoil. Post-World War Italy was in turmoil with economic hardship, strikes and fear of communism. Benito Mussolini and his fascist party capitalized on these fears. How it happened? Mussolini became the prime minister through the combination of legal maneuvers. We'll leave it on Hormush, because this is the one, sorry, I should have left it on Hormush, but yeah. Including the March on Rome. He gradually dismantled democratic institutions, controlled the media, and established a one-party state. Why it unfolded? Public fear of instability and communism led many to accept Mussolini's authoritarian promises of order and strength. 4. Chile under Augusto Pinochet, 1973 to 1990. Context: Chile had a functioning Chile, some people say, but I call it Chile. Chile had a functioning democracy until a coup d'etat overthrew President Salvador Allende. Pinochet established a military dictatorship with the backing of sectors of society and international actors. How it happened? The military, supported by some civilians and foreign powers, notably the United States, seized power. Pinochet dissolved Congress, banned political parties, and ruled through decrees. Why it unfolded? Once again, economic struggles, political polarization, and Cold War dynamics led Chileans to tolerate the coup as a solution to perceived chaos. Fascinating, eh? 5. Ancient Athens. Now there's some words in here because it's ancient Athens they're talking about. So ancient Athens under the tyranny of the Torti. It's the first time I heard this about Athens under this Torti. They were known as the Torti. Context: Athens was the birthplace of democracy, but fell under the control of an oligarchic regime known as the Torti tyrants after its defeat in the here's a word, Peloponnesian War. How it happened? With Spartan support, the Torti imposed a brutal rule, executing thousands of Athenians and confiscating property. Democratic institutes were suspended. Why it unfolded? War fatigue, once again. So it's either, this stuff either unfolds, I'm seeing the pattern here. So it either unfolds because of economic instability or war, or something to do with the come down after a war, some type of war. So why it unfolded in Athens was war fatigue, and external pressures allowed anti-democratic forces to exploit the situation and impose tyranny through the regime. I'll start that one again. So why it unfolded in Athens? War fatigue and external pressure allowed anti-democratic forces to exploit the situation and impose tyranny, although the regime was short-lived. And then it's nice enough to say key patterns within this, how tyranny takes over, right? Now, YouTube, this is for entertainment purposes. I know that word tyranny might be a bit of a trigger word for you, but it's a real thing and it happens, it's reality. So you suppressing that word, it means you're suppressing reality, right? People have to be able to live in reality to come to an understanding. That's a personal view. All of this is for entertainment purposes before you have a hissy fit. Key patterns in how tyranny takes over. 1. Now give me a list of 5, right? Number 1. Exploitation of crisis. Tyrants often rise during economic, social or political crises, offering stability and solutions. 2. Manipulation of fear. Fear of enemies, quote, real or imagined, end quote, is used to justify suppressing freedoms and concentrating power. 3. Control of information. Tyrants control media and education to shape public opinion and suppress dissent. 4. Erosion of checks and balances. Democratic safeguards like independent courts, free press and opposition parties are undermined or dismantled. 5. Gradual encroachment. Tyranny often emerges incrementally, with small steps that seem justified until it's too late to reverse. And then it asks me the question, it's starting to do this more and more now, I've noticed. By studying these patterns, we can better understand how to guard against tyranny in modern times. Would you like to delve deeper into any of these examples related to teams? And I just straight away, because where we are, Ireland, I said, has this ever happened in Ireland or anything akin to this happen in Ireland? Right? It came straight back to me and it said, Ireland has not experienced tyranny in the classical sense of a dictatorship taking over a functioning democracy. However, there have been moments in Irish history when oppressive systems or external forces could be described as tyrannical, particularly during the periods of colonisation and conflict. Here are a few examples. So it talks about British rule from the 16th to the 20th century. What happened? From the Tudor conquest of Ireland, of the Act of the Union in 1801 and beyond, Ireland was ruled by Britain. During this time, Irish people experienced oppression through laws that marginalised Catholics, confiscated land, and suppressed Irish culture and language. How it unfolded? Control was maintained through a combination of military force, economic domination, and the legal system, e.g. the penal laws. The Great Famine, 1845 to 1852, exacerbated by British policies, is often seen as a tragic consequence of this rule. Tyranny aspect. Irish citizens had little say in governance, faced systematic discrimination, and lived under a colonial system designed to benefit British interests. 2. The Cromwellian conquest, from 1649 to 1653. What happened? Oliver Cromwell led a brutal campaign to subjugate Ireland. His forces massacred civilians, confiscated land, and implemented harsh policies and aimed at eradicating resistance. How it unfolded. After the English Civil War, Cromwell's forces invaded Ireland, carrying out massacres at places like Drogheda and Wexford. Land was seized and many people were displaced or exiled. The tyranny aspect. The use of extreme violence and oppressive laws created an environment of fear and exploitation. Number 3. The partition of Ireland and Northern Ireland in 1921. What happened? Following the War of Independence, the island was divided into the Irish Free State, which later became the Republic of Ireland, and Northern Ireland, which remained under British control. The partition led to decades of tension and violence in the north. How it unfolded? Northern Ireland's government, dominated by Unionists, systematically marginalised the Catholic minority through gerrymandering, discriminatory housing policies, and restricted voting rights. The tyranny aspect of this was, for Catholics in Northern Ireland, this period felt tyrannical due to institutionalised discrimination and a lack of civil rights, leading to the outbreak of the Troubles in the late 1960s. 4. The Troubles from 1969 to 1998. What happened? While not a traditional tyranny, the Troubles in Northern Ireland involved significant oppression and violence from both state and non-state actors again. You see that? Very much like the Pinochet thing in Chile. Very much like the Pinochet thing. I'll start that one again. Was while not a traditional tyranny, the troubles in Northern Ireland involved significant oppression and violence from both state and non-state actors. In Chile's case, it was the Americans coming down. In our case, I guess it's the EU. I guess it's Brussels. The British government imposed policies like internment without trial, while paramilitary groups operated with little accountability. How it unfolded: the British Army's presence in Northern Ireland and policies like Bloody Sunday in 1972, when unarmed protesters were shot, led to widespread anger and resistance. Civil liberties were often curtailed during this period. The tyranny aspect: for many in the Catholic nationalist community, the British government's actions felt like a form of state tyranny. Number 5, economic and political control post-independence. After gaining independence in 1922, Ireland faced challenges related to economic dependency on Britain, church control over social policies, and an elite political class. While not tyranny, some argue that the dominance of the Catholic Church in education, healthcare, and social policies restricted freedoms. The Church exerted significant influence over legislation, often prioritising religious doctrine over rights, e.g. bans on contraception and divorce. Tyranny aspect: for many women and marginalised groups, the lack of autonomy and the Magdalen laundry system felt oppressive. So it asked itself a question then, and it said, did tyranny take over a democracy in Ireland? Unlike other nations, Ireland's democratic institutions have remained intact since independence. However, there have been times when external pressures, e.g. British colonial rule, or internal balances, e.g. the Church's influence, led to what some would describe as an oppressive conditions for segments of society. Right? Would you like me to explore these more? I said, what did I say to it? I described the situation that we're facing here, which is the whole point of this video with Mary Lou, said her first name. 10 lashes. With Miss Lou saying here, no, you don't get a veto. So I was saying to it, like, this is the situation in Ireland now where we have communities all around Ireland which might have a population of 300 and they're putting 1,000 people, 1,000, refugees in on top of these little communities. So like basically what could happen here, or why would something like that be done, right? He said, it said, the situation you're describing involves a sense of disenfranchisement, the lack of local autonomy, which can feel oppressive, especially when decisions significantly impact small communities. While it may not fit the classical definition of tyranny, where absolute power is wielded by a ruler or regime to suppress freedoms, it could be seen as a form of authoritarian AUTHORITARIN. Struggling with that word. I know what it is, I just can't fucking say it. I just can't get it out, right? Authoritarian governance. If decisions are made without meaningful consultation or consent from the people affected. Now, in this video, you heard her say that the issue there is that the sitting government never had consultation and they were using the veto as an excuse. They were saying no veto as in an excuse not to have consultation. She's saying we should have consultation, but you still don't get a veto. So it's I don't agree with the news reporters or anything, but she said, but you still don't get to say no. And she says, no, you don't get a veto. That was her answer to it. So that explains her point of view. She's never going to give an Irish community a veto on their area, So So just to clear that up. And she said it 5 or 6 times, just so you knew, right? So tyranny and its modern forms. Traditional tyranny. This involves centralized absolute power, where dissent is suppressed. Sorry, where dissent is suppressed and citizens are stripped of their agency. Huh? Soft tyranny. In modern democracies, bugger. Tyranny can manifest when governments or institutions impose decisions that disregard public opinion, often justifying them as being for the greater good or for progress. See these little things that are popping up? And this is what all these parties harp on about. It's for the greater good. It's an international obligation. It's for the greater good, you know? This can occur even in democratic systems if power is concentrated and public input is minimalised. The situation in Ireland, centralised decisions. If the government is making sweeping decisions about relocating large numbers of people without local consultation or accountability, it can feel like a disregard for the will of the people. In small communities, a sudden and significant increase in population, especially from different cultural or linguistic backgrounds, can strain resources, create tensions, and alter the social fabric. If these changes are imposed without consent, it can lead to resentment and the perception of authoritarianism. Oh, I said it properly there, did I? And now I did say to it, our parties are saying that we don't have a veto. So I said, the no veto statement that you made, I picked up on that. And I put it all in caps. The no veto statement that you made. When political leaders declare that communities have no choice, it reinforces a sense of powerlessness among citizens, which can resemble tyranny in the sense of stripping people of their agency. Is this tyranny? It depends on how we define the term. Yes, it could be seen as tyranny if the government consistently ignores public opinion, refuses to consult communities, and enforces decisions. That's them two words together. And enforces decisions that lead to social upheaval. It can be interpreted as a form of soft tyranny. The lack of choice and consultation, combined with significant changes to communities, undermines the democratic principles like participation and representation. And it gives you the opposite option, which is no, it's viewed as political enforcement. From the government's perspective, this might be framed as fulfilling international obligations, e.g. EU asylum commitments, UN agreements, or addressing humanitarian needs. In this context, they may argue, now, you see why my voice even picked up saying that? Because that's what it fucking is. That's exactly what's happening. In this context, they may argue that balancing local concerns with global responsibilities requires decisive actions, not referenda, which means consulting nobody. As long as we address or adhere to these international policies, then who gives a fuck what local people think? That's what that's saying. That's exactly what that's saying, and that's exactly what these people are doing to us. Historical parallels in Ireland. The current situation can draw parallels to periods of perceived disenfranchisement in Irish history, i.e. British rule. During colonisation, Irish communities had little say in how resources were allocated or how their land was used, fostering a sense of tyranny. Economic decisions post-independence in the 20th century, economic policies often ignored rural voices, leaving smaller communities feeling abandoned or overridden. So key questions to consider with all of this. Democratic oversight. Are these policies being debated openly? And do they have majority support in Parliament or the public? Local consultation. Are affected communities given a genuine voice in this process, or are decisions imposed unilaterally? Long-term impact. What are the social, economic and cultural consequences of these policies? And are they being addressed adequately? So there's 3 questions for people that watch my videos to answer in the comment section, please, right? Them last 3 ones that I just read out to you there. But it's fascinating how when you go back and you look at every time it's happened, it's the same fucking thing. It's the cycles that I keep talking about. We're in cycles. It's a cycle again and again and again. And when, every 4 years, it's supposed to make us happy that someone else got in that's going to, quote, change, end quote. They don't change nothing. They just continue and continue and continue to take things away from us bit by bit. I.e. tyranny.